Welcome to the GuestX podcast, where my co-host Brian Amaui and I uncover the latest technologies and human-driven initiatives that are raising customer expectations and forever changing how we define customer experience across a host of industries. If you are passionate about creating incredible content and unique experiences, join us as we talk to leading product and experience experts across the globe and learn about how today's most successful brands are setting themselves apart from the competition. Welcome to the GuestX podcast with my co-host. They like to call him Mr. Guest Experience, Brian Amaui. Mr. Guest Experience, how you doing? You good?
I'm good. It's Friday. I'm excited.
Yeah. I'm
excited for today's conversation. I think it's pretty cool.
I am really excited about today's conversation. In fact, I was just on the site getting ready to go back over to the UK, where I will be in November, and they have got some interesting product, I would say, over in that neck of the woods. And today's going to be one of those things where it's probably something most of us will never do, but you can live vicariously through those who are traveling this way, because this is
Let's hope
really
a lot
cool.
of people will do it.
Well, I know. Yeah. Well, that's true. You may be opening, our guest today may be opening the doors to things that people only thought they would be able to read about. Brian, do a little intro for our guest today, because I think some people are going to know him from some other, some, and some he's going to be a new player. So give us a little intro.
Yeah. Today we have Michael Goldin. He is a graduate from Auburn University with a Bachelor in Science Administration. He's obsessed with historic hotels, vacation rentals, unique stays. He has a ton of experience in our industry, over 7 years. Most of you might know him as the Director of Business for Rented and Noise Aware. He's a two-time Focusrite 35 under 35 leader, host of Good Morning Hospitality, and is now the co-founder of Storied Collection. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Brian. That's quite the intro. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well,
Excited to have you here.
hey, Brian, I by the way, not only have I not been two times Focusrite 35 under 35 leader, I can't remember what it was feel like to be 35. So I can be envious on two levels there.
I agree with you. I was at Focusrite. I just didn't get the mentions.
Right.
I almost got booted.
Hanging out in the lobby, Brian.
That's right. Hanging out with one of the lobby squatters at Focusrite.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I actually Focusrite for me. That was a very interesting experience for me. I was up against some serious guys and did my stage presence. It was my first time being at Focusrite, and got to go up with the guys from Beyond Pricing. That's where I
Probably
got
heard of
meet
that group. Yeah.
Okay.
They've done okay.
Yeah, Ian McHenry, and we were both sat in the room, and I'm like, hey, I'm Brian. He goes, hey, I'm Ian. I'm like, what are you doing? And he told me what he was doing. I was like, you're absolutely insane. And he had his spreadsheets up, and he's going through, and he goes, what are you doing? I said, guest experience vacation rentals. He walked on stage, nails it. I walk on stage, I absolutely hammered it. It was not the presentation of my lifetime, but it was fantastic. It was actually one of those places where you just get to meet really cool people. So I know that's
right. Special.
coming up too in November.
Yeah, a lot of heavy hitters there, and yeah, I haven't pitched there myself, but both companies, Rented and Noiseware, have. It's it's quite the stage. I
It's a
don't
lot of
think I
fun.
would nail that one.
Yeah,
Difficult. Okay, so
Michael, tell us what you're up to. I mean, you've done so many. You've been part of some really cool companies in the industry. Now you're launching Storied Collection, and I'm probably going to geek out a little bit here because it's all about the guest experience. And tell us about Storied Collection, what you guys are up to. You've just launched, and it sounds like just an insane concept. Take us through it. What are you doing?
Yeah, it's the concept that's just continued to iterate. So my wife and I, during COVID, were kind of dreaming of the vacation that we wanted, and we ended up booking a castle hotel in Ireland. And the experience we got, kind of seeing behind the walls and hearing the stories, led me to tongue in cheek say, I'm going to buy one of these one day. My wife can have the stables. I can have a hospitality business. I talked to the few people and ran into a couple of people that said, yes, that's genius. Let's do it. So instead of buying, we're starting out building a collection of properties that probably a lot of Americans don't know exist and the stories that are there. And the second property that we signed within our collection, it's called Fenton Tower. It's in Scotland. It turned out to be in my family tree,
Cool.
like totally unbeknownst to me, anybody in my family.
That's cool.
I was doing the research before the call with him and saw a name that overlapped with the name that I knew dated back to Scotland. And sure enough, it was the same one. Seems really cool. Seems really unique. Yes, it's cool. No, it's not that unique. Going back to the 1500s, there's at least 1 million people alive today that could say the same thing back to that same person. And so we started out building a collection of castle and manor house hotels. The way we've kind of shifted the brand is former residences turned accommodations to anchor in this ancestral play, because the feeling that you get, the experience that you get going back to your ancestral property is unbelievable. I was in Scotland. I visited Fenton Tower this past summer, and your mind's just thinking of all the crazy things that have happened in this building, and that like the whole butterfly effect, me being here, my existence, had that person not owned this place and done whatever they did in these walls, wouldn't be the same. I wouldn't be here. And, as we peel back some layers with some properties and some guests, we just continue to hear wild, insane stories of inspirations of people getting back to these places. One of the properties in our collection was where Shakespeare got married. Another was where there was a mass murder, like 800 people died in it.
Oh,
Like some rebels, right?
yeah.
Were all executed. So there's some insane stories, and our goal is to tell those stories, inspire people to travel, to make history cool again. And then, the absolute home run is when we have those ancestral ties, which just makes the trip.
So these properties are renovated properties. They're brought up to date. And then on top of that, you guys are doing like a full service in a lot of the properties, not all of them, full service within the property, right? So walk us through what the experience looks like. You book a property. What kind of services can some of the guests expect to have when booking these properties?
Yeah, good question. So because we're not a luxury brand or a mid-scale brand or a brand focused on, hotels with great restaurants, our lens is history and ancestry. We run the gambit from 120 pounds a night to 1,200 a night. It can go the full range. So some places have spa, equestrian centers, falconry, archery, like all the things that you would expect at a luxury castle. And then other places are, modest place to sleep that have really cool stories to go in with it. So it really, the experience is going to be unique depending on which property within our collection. But the feeling we want people to walk away with, there's a big trend right now of obviously Instagram, but the storytelling and the experiential travel. And there's no better experiential Instagrammable properties than the ones that we're adding in our collection.
It's really cool. So it's interesting because when I first saw it, I thought I was thinking more of that high end traveler, right? But I do think I love the history angle on it, making history cool again. And you're right. I mean, with these older properties, it's really, hey, look, outside of usually, I'm sure the property they sit on, which, looking at some of these photos is incredible. But beyond that, what makes them so unique and so interesting is that history, and you've got to understand the story. So, how did you start to put together the team? Where are you guys kind of in that process? What's been some of the learnings along the way, and where you go, where do you take it now from here? What's that next step?
Yeah, good question. Some of the people I shopped the concept around to, a good friend of mine was at Airbnb. He was one of the very first employees there, worked there for 10 years. And then after the IPO, I moved on and was into some other things. he and I grabbed a coffee in Miami about a year ago, right after my wife and I had gotten back from Ireland. And I was kind of telling him about this trip and this experience. And he was doing his wedding planning, and they were going to get married at a manor house outside of London. And he said finding those places was really challenging as an American. There's properties all over the place over there, but we don't know how to find them because you can't just search London because they're not in London. They're on the outskirts in the middle of nowhere. And so he looked at it from a different lens, from Airbnb and then his whole wedding planning, and said, we can just build a brand that if people want to book a castle hotel or a manor house hotel, they know where to go. And so through his connections in mind, we started building kind of advisory team, who knows how to build brands, who's done it before. We added the former CEO of Best Western in the UK as one of our first advisors. We also added the former CFO of Ritz-Carlton, and he was also the CEO of Design Hotels, which is pretty much a comp of what we're going for. It's part collection, part brand. And then they ended up selling to Marriott.
Yeah. Good exit there.
So
That's,
it
yeah.
was a good comp.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And so obviously then, finding the right properties where that fit, the history, the opportunity to tell history and all that, that's got to be then that kind of crucial first step. Because you got a little bit of a chicken or the egg, as does most or all multi-sided marketplaces by definition. So is that kind of right now what's driving it, is identifying the properties? Are people able to book directly on the site, or is it more of a listing site, kind of as early HomeAway days, or how are you handling that?
Yeah, it is book direct. We've got connectivity with all of our properties. We have to build supply before we start building the demand. Our goal at launch was to launch with 15 properties. We felt like that'd be enough to give us some PR juice. And the response over in the UK has been huge. We launched with 28.
Wow.
We had 3 more sign up in the past week, just, from kind of hearing about it from the launch. And we've got another 10 or 15 right now in the pipeline that we should close. We're about 80% of the properties we speak to are signing up because it's something new. It's something they haven't had a lens on before. We're not an OTA. We don't commoditize the properties. We want their story to shine through, and we want their property, their visuals, the reasons why people are booking to shine through. People that are going to stay in the middle of nowhere, English countryside, aren't looking for the cheapest rate that's closest to Buckingham Palace, right? They're looking for a place to get away. They're absolutely gorgeous. They're set more times than not in the countryside. They're surrounded by hundreds, in some case, thousands of acres. It's a really cool, serene experience. And if you can kind of get there and unplug, you can just feel your stress going down. And then then your imagination starts to kick in. And that's kind of where some of the experiences can happen.
So you guys are focused on the United Kingdom, it sounds like, first. Do you guys have your eyes set on other destinations, or is the focus to mainly do the UK first, figure out, see how it's going to go there? Because there's thousands of properties out there, I imagine, with very unique history, stories, and then try to figure out what the demand is in other destinations. I feel like a lot of companies that launch try to do too many places, too many times, too many units without understanding their market, and then never actually hit the right notes. What's your approach there?
Yeah, we're trying to balance that out. To your point, there's so many of these properties, and we thought early days that we might be TAM constrained, but in reality, we can run in the UK a long time without having to expand anywhere else. Now, we've got, of course, much larger ambitions, and France alone has literally thousands of these types of properties. Italy, they're all over the place. Spain, Germany, like there's this type of product is out there. So to your point, we're trying not to jump the gun too early on expansion. We really want to nail the UK and Ireland first, have a good pipeline of bookings and travel agents that we're working with and all of that. And then we'll expand. And there's a couple couple ways that we would expand or things that might expedite that, of course, but we won't get into those quite yet.
Yeah. A while back, I was actually at a Verma conference, and the company I went with, I'm not going to mention it now, it was a really cool experience. We actually did Verma, and then after that, we did a company retreat. We ended up staying countryside in a small castle, and none of us had seen the castle, including the people that booked it. And the experience was cool because it was a castle, but the internal workings of the unit weren't necessarily the best conditions. No pillows, no comforters were torn. It was absolutely freezing cold because it was a true castle. So it had no insulation, no heating system other than fires. And just the expectation was a little bit lower, although the host was out of this world phenomenal. I mean, this guy he brought in a musician. It was my birthday. They brought in a musician from in town. We did all night. I think we were up to like 5 o'clock in the morning singing and having great food and all of this kind of stuff. So the experience was really cool, but the unit was not up to the standards. What are you guys doing to vet the units? So are you guys going through a process to say, this is the type of inventory that we're looking for to join the platform? And are you vetting those units in some way? Or is that something that you're just leaving up to the hosts in hopes that, they're going to meet certain expectations?
Yeah, good question. And this is why we are focused more so or exclusively on exclusive use and hotel versus pure play, short-term rental, Airbnb, Vrbo style inventory. Because quality is important. If you're going to take a trip, especially overseas and stay, you have to have some level of guarantee that it's going to be a good stay. So we've someone within our company has been to probably 80% of the properties that's within the collection. We do try and get out to the properties before we go live with them. Logistically, it doesn't always happen. So then we can revert to what are people saying about them online and what are people saying about them online recently. They might have a good overall average score, but if you look and the last 10 reviews are terrible, then they're not in. And we've selected against people that wanted to be in the collection because of that. So we do have a quality standard. We do have properties have to be 150 years old. They have to be a former residence. There's certain qualifications that we do have to check, but we have townhouses in Edinburgh and London. And then we have, $100 million resorts in the middle of nowhere, Ireland or Scotland.
Michael, do you think this is is this where distribution's going? Where, more of the niche, whether, I've seen, I can't remember the name of the group, but there was a group, I think, that had built a little bit of an aggregation of great surf homes. Right? If you like to surf, Bali, all these different places where you could go in and, go surf, and they were right on the beach, but just around where tying the lodging more to the purpose of the trip. Airbnb's doing this, obviously, their big reveal, but there is a little bit of a feel of that's a little window dressing for Airbnb, that it sounds great and it really it's really on brand for Airbnb, but that's not many people are going there going, maybe I'll stay in a treehouse, for this trip. And so, but what's your thoughts on that? Or is this just something that lives alongside, our more typical distribution?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're revamping our investment deck. So this is something we're looking at upon ourselves. Very, very timely question, Matt. We love what Airbnb is doing with all of the advertisements of stay in a castle, because we're going to own that segment. They're doing advertising for us, and people that don't want to stay in a short-term rental and want to have a more serviced approach, they're going to find us. So we love that approach. I forget who said it, but there's two ways to make money in business. There's bundling and unbundling. And we're in the unbundling category, which, if you talk about history buffs, it might be a small niche. When you talk about ancestry and lineage, that's the second most popular hobby of an American, aside from gardening.
Wow.
Everybody has someone in their family that is like the genealogy nerd, and they've done their whole genealogy. And there's, I think, 125 million family trees on ancestry.com. So yes, it's niche what we're focusing on, but it's a pretty popular niche. And then you get the people like myself and my wife, prior to knowing that we had an ancestral property, just saying, I want to stay in a castle. Like, I don't care where it is. Like, I just want to go find one that looks cool and go stay in it. And this is all referencing Americans going to UK. You've got probably the most popular wedding venue in the UK is the castle or manor house nearby, right? There's one in every town. They're the most popular wedding venue. There's one place in Northern Ireland or Northern England that does like 300 weddings a year. They do one a day,
Yeah.
and they do it like 5 days, 6 days a week. It's insane. So I think we're aiming for to own a niche, own a segment, but not one that's like super, super narrow.
Interesting. Brian, I mean, what are your thoughts when you think about the properties? Because it's like the exact well, it's not purpose built, but it is, it kind of is now. It's where it it fits this really, really well, and it is very unique and hard to find. And so then it lends itself to kind of aggregating them in a better way. Because I do think that there is this movement towards getting away from the aggregation of the Amazon.coms, which is nice if you just want to understand what's out there. But
That's
it's almost like people have flipped it and they've said, okay, you're now going to be top of the funnel for me. So you're going to help me figure out what's out there. But then as I get closer to booking, I'm going to look more to the ones who this is specifically what they do.
I think it's almost a I don't know if it's a hybrid, but it's interesting because I think people are looking for something that's more authentic. They're digging deeper,
Yeah.
than just going onto an Airbnb. And I find that hosts we just had a conversation, I think it was this week, about similar topics, but people really are starting to do a little bit more research on the places that they want to go to, diversify, the experience, and they're looking for something that is a little bit more experiential with the host, the stay. And to be able to do that, I don't know that Airbnb in its beginning days seemed to achieve that. I think it's gotten to a stage where it's become so big and so controlled that they almost lost control of that experience. And so people are looking at more localized experts, websites, experiences to try to get that out of them. So I think what you guys are doing is really interesting from that perspective, because you can almost drive the marketing aspect and bring in those stories in a very different way than your traditional OTA can, and present that to the guest and drive bookings that way. I'm absolutely fascinated at this because about 2 weeks ago, my daughter had a project that was given to her, which was finding out about her ancestors. And I have interest. I have a really interesting background. I mean, my family mostly came from, well, between Syria and Egypt, and then the other side came from Romania. And my daughter decided, she's 8 years old, decided to do the Egyptian side of it. So I reached out to my family, and it's enormous. I mean, we have a WhatsApp that's called Hamawi World, and we probably have about 250 to 300 people from all parts of the world.
That's
And so I
cool.
reached out and I said, does anybody have any information about our family in Egypt? And one of my uncles ended up responding and ended up sending us pictures from the 1920s of our family in Egypt. And it turned out that one of my uncles ended up building a house right next to the pyramids. And he sent me all of these photos of our family house in the 1920s. And you could just you could see the kids on the camels. And their first house was a tent next to one of the pyramids with the sphinx. And it was just outstanding. And Scarlett's going, I want to go to Egypt. I want to go and visit where we used to stay. The house is no longer there. But I think it's fascinating because people will start to dive into their family history. And if you can take that component and then find that place and stay in it, it is a place that people should be planning for and experience and go back to your roots. And so I think that the story component is fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's something
Yeah,
really.
that's fantastic. We love that story. I'm sure she got A+ on that assignment.
He hasn't presented it yet. We're in the process of putting it all together. It's so cool.
It,
Yeah.
I,
well,
I totally geeked out on it, and I wasn't a history, family thing, but yeah, we've done the whole ancestry.com and all that kind of stuff now.
Yeah. See, that's a much happier impetus of how most people fall into ancestry and lineage. A lot of times it's kicked off with the death of a grandparent or
mhm.
a parent. I was on a call this morning with a guy who his father died. He was a couple of glasses of wine deep into his ancestry account, and right after his dad passed, and found a property that had his name on it, and realized that that was in his family for 600 years. It had just gone derelict in England. He got on a plane, flew over there and bought it. And he's been renovating this property for the past 2 or 3 years. So there's the gambit of like people that go and stay and have this cool experience. And then guys that are like, I'm bringing that back in my family, flies over there and buys it. So it there's this kind of raw emotion of people's history and how authentic it feels and looks. And there's another gentleman that's become a close friend of mine. He's in the space, but I won't use his name. He was in a plane crash when he was in college. His dad and girlfriend were in it was a single engine plane. They both died. He survived. And so he did his family tree from his dad's side, and it dated back to a manor house in Ireland. And
Mm.
he's been back there 3 times since, kind of revisit his roots and get in touch with his father. So there's just some incredible stories that come out of this. And every property we've spoken to has said, yeah, we've had somebody reach out that says they're linked with an owner in the past or this and that. So what an unbelievable way to have someone tie in with your property, right?
Mhm.
Just makes it
Yeah.
more than a property. And at Explory, we talk about being more than just a place to stay, but it's, in leisure markets, that's usually more around, you know, the things to do in the area, the activities and attractions. But in this case, truly being a part of, someone's history. And I think too, I think through COVID, a lot of stuff is credited to COVID or what have you. But I do think there's been a little bit more of a reflection. We had a guest on a while back, Brian. It's been probably one of the more powerful things someone said, I think. But they said that COVID didn't awaken us to life is short. We always knew life was short. It awakened us to life is unpredictable, that it could change tomorrow, right? That's the part that kind of scared us, that shook us a little bit, right? Because we all knew life's short, but we really generally always thought tomorrow will be much like today. And so I think with that is this, just this wanting to understand where you came from, your roots, where, this is really cool. And it's a way to do it through properties, through staying. And it shows these properties are a lot more than just, just a building. Right.
Yeah. I mean, just the other day at the Skiff conference, Brian Chesky said, unique properties are becoming the destination.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so you've got fewer people going to New York City to go shopping. They're going to, a unique property that they can experience, that they can Instagram, that they can kind of show off their in. And that trend, I think you can see it everywhere in the data of how travelers are going. And into the countryside is one thing, but now that COVID's over, if you will, that trend continues. So it's good to see. It's what we're counting on, obviously, but it just means a little bit more.
Yeah.
Can
You're putting some emotion behind it, some real
yeah.
emotion. That's really, really cool. So as we wrap up, if people are interested, obviously, they can go to the website. If they've got properties, is it all kind of there? How do they get in touch?
Yeah, feel free to reach out to me directly via LinkedIn. But if you're a property interested in joining us, there's links on our website. If you're interested in and want to be inspired on a trip, poke around, please do. We're in the middle of putting some packages together as well to curate a few stops on a trip if you want to make it go a longer stay out of it. So yeah, please check out storiedcollection.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
And Michael, if you need anybody to inspect the homes, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to take some of the time out of my day and do that for you guys.
Outsourcing services now? Is that what you're Michael, thank you so much. Really appreciate you spending some time.
Enjoyed it. Thanks, guys.
That's it for this week's episode of GuestX. Be sure to sign up for our email list at guestxpodcast.com. That's guest, the letter X, podcast.com. And follow us on your favorite podcast apps so you never miss an episode. He is Mr. Guest Experience Brian O'Malley, and I'm Matthew Loney, signing off and reminding you to always create a customer experience worth talking about.
This podcast is a Hospitality.fm production.